Welcome to Okaloosa Today, local news and information. Connecting the communities of Football to Beach, Destin, and Okaloosa County.
Welcome to the September edition of Okaloosa Today. This is your monthly look at the city of Destin, Fort Walton Beach, and Okaloosa County. I'm Doug Rayner with the City of Destin, and today's Destin segment will cover a process that the city has recently gone through, and that's the Envision Destin process. Joining me is City Manager Greg Kisela. Ken Gallander, you are the Community Development Director for the city. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Your work on this project has been talked about on this show recently, a few months ago, and we are here today to talk about where we came through that process. Greg, you want to lay out the Envision Destin process for us?
Yeah, Doug, the City Council earlier this year authorized us to proceed with selection of a consultant that would help visualize proposed changes to the city's comprehensive plan as well as the land development code. Back in the March-April timeframe, the City Council selected Canaan & Associates out of Orlando to perform the visualization, and it really is to help translate the land development code and the comprehensive plan into images that people could understand exactly what is being proposed. And they had a series of workshops with different stakeholders in the different 4 study areas, and they studied the harbor area, Holiday Isle, Crystal Beach, as well as the town center. And they took all of that information and input from the individuals participants, and we had a lot of folks participate over a 3 or 4 day period. And then they came back in July with a series of recommendations for the community and the City Council to consider, and that subsequently was presented to the City Council in a formal workshop in August, where we were able to get specific direction from the City Council about proposed changes to the comprehensive plan as well as the land development code. So we're excited. I think generally it was well received by the community and generally well received by the City Council. And now the heavy lifting occurs. We have to now take all of those recommendations and merge it into specific text for the comprehensive plan as well as the land development code, which we're expected to do here over the next 30 to 45 days.
And this wasn't just some arbitrary look at these 2 pieces of or documents, the land development code and comprehensive plan. I think, Ken, you've mentioned before that this is every 10 years we actually go through an exercise similar to this.
Yeah, it's really sooner than that. It's usually around 7 years.
Okay.
The state requires us to, and you always continually want to look to improve upon, evaluate your comprehensive plan. Where is your city going in that 15, 20, 30 year time frame? So it's a very important process, and we're very blessed that we actually had this opportunity to do this kind of project. A lot of communities don't get this opportunity, and it was really very well done by Canaan, and a lot of good input, as Greg said. Several hundred people participated through those workshops.
Yeah, and that we're here to talk about the results and some of the outcomes and where we're going to go from there. You know, as you said, Canaan Associates did workshops with the public, 2 different rounds. Hundreds of people showed up for that. A lot of information was pushed around, and I think we got some good information passed on to council in a workshop back in August, and they were able to see what was recommended. Let's kind of start with that. Well, what did we learn in general, maybe just from the workshops, and then we can kind of get into the planning areas.
Yeah, well, let me talk a little bit about the transportation, because I know that's gotten quite a bit of play in the media. What Canaan is recommending, and clearly Destin relies on and is dependent on Highway 98. That is a 100-foot right-of-way. You know, goes from the Marler Bridge all the way out to the county line on the east side. And what they're suggesting, and as a plan, is to look at from basically Main Street back to Marler, take that 100-foot right-of-way, reshape it. They're proposing 6 or 7 roundabouts, and I know that has a lot of scary connotation when you talk about roundabout. Anytime you got a road that handles 50 to 55,000 cars, and you introduce any kind of traffic calming measures like a roundabout, it spooks people, and we understand that, and that will require a lots of planning and lots of study before it's implemented. And it really will be probably 5, 6, 7 years before we get to a point where we're actually able to seriously implement something like that. But what it did for us, it took that 100-foot right-of-way. The existing mediums that are out there are about 30 foot in width. Mm-hmm. It reduces the mediums down to 10 feet and recaptures 30 foot of pedestrian movements on the south side of Highway 98, that from Main Street all the way back to the Marla Bridge. You have a very user-friendly, very intense landscaped area for pedestrians, and that's what's the exciting part of it. So roundabouts is a part of it, but overall making it much safer for pedestrians and motorists. We have, they counted up about 800 crashes out there over a 3-year period. And those could be vehicle crashes, pedestrian, bicyclist. So we need to make Highway 98 safer. So that's what they were introducing as a transportation component. Everybody needs to stay relaxed and as we work our way through it, because I know a lot of people have some strong feelings about roundabouts, but we really need to make Highway 98 through Destin. That is our front door. We need to make it friendly. It needs to be inviting. We need to say we're open for business. And if you're a pedestrian, it's safe. And that's what Canaan is trying to do.
One thing I noticed that I took away from those meetings was that there's some real positives. You don't necessarily think positives when you think of Highway 98, but the fact that there's such a wide right-of-way that so many things can be done inside that without getting into a lot of private property. I know, Ken, you've talked heavily about urban outfitting an area where you have more walkability, and that naturally will calm the traffic and slow it down as well, won't it?
That's correct. And Greg touched on it a little bit. Is Canaan, through the process of doing visual preference surveys and some of this visualization techniques that they used in the workshops, it was the branding or the identity, and Highway 98 is a significant component of, you improve upon that corridor, you make it safe, you make it inviting, you make it what we have been striving to do for a long time, and then the right development then results from that. And that was another component of what Canaan was looking at, is how can we look at the development potential over the next 20 years. What is the intensity and the density and the heights, and what they're going to be, what the public envisioned for that. And that was a very good component of that. They're looking at doing some significant reduction. I mean, it's going to be a change of less intense, less dense, shorter heights of buildings in the Harbor District. We currently have the ability for buildings to go 15 stories, 160 feet. Now it's going to be recommended that they go down to around 10 stories. And so it's still a tall building, yes, right. But it's a lot different vision than what was in the comp plan and our land development regulations before. And that is going to be kind of university applied throughout the community. We're looking at kind of having that less dense, less intense components to our community.
And that was heard from conversations throughout the process of Canaan asking the public at these meetings, and to set the stage a little bit for our viewers of the show, they showed a series of images where people were able to rate what they wanted their community to look like. Not necessarily could it look like that, but where they wanted their community to go. And that's where these ideas came from and some of these recommendations, and we'll hit on those a little bit, and just maybe starting with the planning areas. Greg?
Yeah, let me emphasize that. This is not Canaan and Associates telling Destin what it should look like. This is the participants telling Canaan, and then Canaan translating those into visualization as well as text changes to the comp plan and land development code. And I applaud Canaan for listening. They captured every word, every comment, and then they basically rated those based on what they were hearing and brought that back. And there was some really good feedback from the community, and it was pretty consistent. I think generally what we were hearing is that overall the participants wanted less dense, less intense buildings, smaller buildings. Even the property owners wanted to know from a certainty standpoint exactly what they could build and what they can't build. And that's what Canaan is recommending. It is basically, we are proposing to eliminate the tiering system. There's been a lot of negative connotation about Tier 3, so there won't be any of the tiering systems anymore. A property owner, developer, and neighbors will know exactly what that building envelope can look like. So if they buy next to it, they all know what the size of the building could be, the height of it, and it will give them a much more predictable outcome.
Right.
And that's what's exciting.
Takes out a lot of the guesswork, which is what we heard was a problem.
Yep.
And simplification. And it's, when somebody from the public comes into me, I sit at my desk, yes, I read these comprehensive plans, these land development regulations. I go to Greg's office and we talk about it daily, but somebody that wants to come in, I can then more easily explain to them, sir, ma'am, this is what the development rights are for within these different planning areas in our city. So that just helps staff, other staff people to communicate out, and just everybody understanding what those mean.
Well, let's talk about these planning areas just briefly. We had 4: Crystal Beach, Holiday Isle, the Harbor District, and Town Center. And let's maybe hit on Crystal Beach a little bit. Just there are a few things that we can mention that were recommended for those areas.
One particular thing that came up was we heard a lot about vacation rentals and the impact of that use in these established neighborhoods. So one component that Canaan is recommending is that they establish kind of an overlay to ensure that these larger homes are more appropriate and those existing homes aren't either taken away and rebuilt as some of these larger vacation homes. So it's going to look at that consistency in those that residential kind of component. Kind of similar heights that would be allowed in the Crystal Beach area.
Right.
And looking at some of what we all want, that's a very walkable area of our community. And Canaan was wanting to emphasize that walkable enhancements to that, ensure that those are sustained in that community, and make sure you have some of those mixture of uses. Restaurants, you can walk to it rather than having to drive to it. So just make sure we're enhancing those components to the.
Yeah, most of the buildings, for example, in the harbor and in the town center, under the current land development code, current comp plan, as Ken mentioned earlier, could go to 15 stories, 160 feet. This reduces it to 10 stories, 110 feet. So it gives it a smaller building. It's going to be, and part of our code allows property owners and developers to count both dwelling units and floor area ratio, which is how much commercial and non-residential space they can have. Canaan is recommending, for consistency and for predictability, is that one number for everything, and let the property owner and the developer decide how they're going to use that capacity they have in their building envelope. So that will give neighbors and people in the community a much better understanding of what can and cannot get built.
And that will be consistent throughout all planning areas, correct?
That's right.
Every one of them.
Okay.
It's referred to, we're calling it a total FAR.
Right.
And so it's just a new methodology. And through the analysis, it is really a reduction overall in terms of what we're mentioning before. Less intense, less dense, but it's more appropriate and based on the vision of what our public has desired.
One of the interesting ideas that came out was a concept or a design for the town center. I think that probably has the most potential to change because it's not as built out and it has a little more diverse in land. Tell us a little bit about the idea behind the town center.
Some of the communication that came forth through the workshops, the 2 public workshops at the community center, was what can we do to enhance the permanent residents. It was what amenities do we have, what employment opportunities are there, recreational opportunities. So Canaan kind of took that and said, you have a town center community redevelopment area. It's in essence sort of struggled over the last decade, and it's a perfect opportunity to really try and master plan that out in the next 20 plus years. And looking at enhanced parks, large parks, some different kind of housing, a little more dense type housing around that commercial uses, and so it enhances that walkable community area. and a linear park along the Gulf Power easement to connect a lot of those open spaces. So, and they spoke to, the public's probably heard a lot about high school here in Destin, but there's opportunities for such thing as a charter high school. And that would be, it could be a partnership with an employment base that is enhancing a particular type of curriculum or something to that effect that we could enhance, and could be a synergy in the town center area. So those are kind of the things that they wanted to look at. Very conceptual, takes a lot more, I hate to say it, planning and effort to analyze what, because you've got a lot of property owners down there, different ideas of where, but it's the gathering of minds to come up with a concept.
Good. It turned out really well, I think.
Yeah. And while we're doing all this, I think it's very important for our people that's watching this show to understand that everybody that owns property has a series of property rights. And I think Canaan did a really nice job of trying to be respectful of those bundle of property rights, and make sure that we were being, we didn't diminish their property rights to a point where they would be having, a potential legal challenge against the city. So you're always balancing those issues with neighbors, and I think they've done a good job of that. It is exciting. I mean, this is was designed to be a ground up approach to letting the community help participate in what Destin will look like over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And I think we've accomplished that to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think so too. And just as a note, all of these meetings, these public meetings, were put on the city's YouTube channel. Each one was videoed, so you can actually go to the city's YouTube channel and watch those. You can get there by going through the city's Facebook page or the city website. And in every meeting that took place, all these public comments were captured, so that if you couldn't participate, you can see what the sentiment was overall, what people were looking at. And again, I think Canaan really did a good job of capturing that and working with staff, and now presenting that to the council at a workshop in August, where I think you all have a lot of work to do to go back and put this together.
Good guidance from the city council. Now it's like Greg mentioned, putting it into some legible, understandable words, and moving forward with that.
Let's talk about a time frame real quick. We have about a minute left. What's our process from here on out?
The next session of the public session will be on October 12th at 5:30 at the city council chambers there at the annex, and it's designed to Canaan to submit to them the written text. We'll get comments from the city council and the public at that point, assuming that we're on target. That will then go to the city's local planning agency in early November, back to the city council for first reading by mid to late November. Then it has to go to the state of Florida to be reviewed, and then subsequently back to the city council, hopefully in the January timeframe.
Still a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
And a good bit more vetting. It's not finished, and again, if anyone would like to be a part of that, they can still participate by going to some of these public meetings that we have set
Several
up.
more meetings to happen.
Yep.
Well, guys, thank you for doing this. I know it's been a big project, and thank you for working through this for our public, and of course our viewers appreciate the information today.
Okay.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching the show. I want to make sure you stay tuned for the City of Fort Walton Beach Next with Joe Soria.